Okay, in this video, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to use Aspire to get a just plain text. You can change the font to anything you want and then carve that. And then we're going to use the carving to be at the center of the work. The other one is I'm going to show you how to take a picture and outline the picture of, say, for instance, somebody handwrites something or that one Kindle Marie Studios that you gave me. Now I've figured out how to actually outline that text and use that in VCarve. So first thing we're going to do, if you follow the little yellow ball on the screen, this is going to show you, you can see it on the screen where my cursor is. It's going to show you where I'm headed to. I'm going to tell you, then I'll click. I'll pause over the area and then I'll click it. You'll also hear the mouse clicks too, and to make sure that you either get a single click or a double click. Sometimes it's a double click. So we'll open Aspire. This will be a double click, and you'll look for that Aspire icon on your desktop. It should be there. That's where it should normally load to. So while we got Aspire open, it's basically a nothing screen. And then from here, we're going to go to create a file. It's the top on the menu bar. So we're going to click create a file. Now, as you know, I've kind of defaulted into millimeters. And so what I want you to do is just kind of follow with me on millimeters, and I'll give you the decimal inch equivalents as I go. So all I want to do is set this file up to where you can put the center of the bit somewhere, making sure that the orientation is correct on your knife handle or just a piece of wood, and it will start as the center. And that's what this red dot is. This would be, think of this red dot as 0, 0 position when you set 0, 0, and 0, meaning 0x, 0y, and then 0 surface, meaning surface of the material. So you want to, we have to first kind of outline a piece of wood that we're going to use. And this is a hypothetical piece of wood, but what I want to do is I want you to set these numbers, this width, height, is the only ones we're going to concern ourselves right now. So the width and the height will be the longest and widest that you want a signature. Now you remember you run your handles down the y-axis. So you need to keep that in mind that we're going to make the text go down the y-axis. And Aspire does everything as though you're looking always down the y-axis. Now you can change that, but let's just always assume that if you're looking down the y-axis, standing at the end of your machine, looking down the y-axis, that's coming from the bottom of the page down here to the top of the page. So where we have the computer set up is the bottom of the page. The top of the page is the opposite end of your bench, and then the left and right is accordingly if you were sitting on your bench at the end. And assume this is the machine bed, okay? And it's long, it's longer than it is wide if the computer's at the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to set this up to where it's going to be about the size that you would want your signature. So what I'm going to say is the x-axis, which is left to right on the screen, I don't want it more than 1 inch in height. So that's 25 millimeters. And the y-axis, I'm going to say that I don't want the signatures to be longer than 2 inches long, which is 50 millimeters. And that's why I have 50 millimeters here. You can change these to anything you want. You can say, no, I want to do multiple lines of text and it's going to be bigger. Well, in reality, this is just to keep your mind in track with where you're at. You don't have to change the material. It'll still carve off of the material. And then the thickness is sort of irrelevant. This can be anything greater than the depth of your cut. That's important. So I just put 10 millimeters there. You'll never cut a signature more than 10 millimeters. The Z0 position is the position that you set 0. And for this, we always want to go off the material surface. This way you can put these signatures on any thickness material. It doesn't really matter so long as you set the 0 at the material surface like we always do. And then the XY datum position. It's always a good thing for this kind of work for the XY datum, which is this 0 position, for the X and Y to be in the center. Okay, that way you can take your bit and you can put it where you want the center of your text, knowing that, for instance, if we make this text 2 inches long, from the center it's going to go an inch up and an inch back. Okay, so that's the reason why I have these settings like they are. So center, you can put it in any corner. As you see, I just moved it up there, but let's say we're going to keep it in the center of the work. For the modeling resolution, I'm going to pull this down. You have 3 types. Always use very high, and that really comes into play whenever you preview your work, whenever you set up what's the tool path that it's going to be. And then I use mahogany because it has the most, I guess you would say, the most contrast from the lighting. So from here, I'm going to say OK. So again, we're doing a single-sided job. We've set up the job size at a width of 1 inch and a length of 2 inches, which is 25 millimeters per inch. 2 inches, 25 millimeters on the width, 50 millimeters on the length. And then again, the thickness doesn't really matter. It just has to be deeper than the cut. So we're going to set a thickness as 10 millimeters. Use the material surface for the 0 position of the bit, and then the XY datum position isn't going to be in the center, meaning this is 0, 0, where the red dot is 0, 0. That means 0, 0 will, when we're finished, will be in the middle of your signature. So I'm going to right here and single click on OK, since we have all those settings done. Okay, now what we have to do is set this up to where you can actually draw something. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to put a text in. So this little T right here where it says draw text, that's where you go to type in people's names. So I'm going to single click this, and it's going to bring up a screen, and in this screen I'm going to create text. Now you can create multiple lines of text just by hitting the enter key, and it'll go to the next line. So I'm just going to type in your name. So there's your name, and as you see, as I typed, it came up on the screen, and it came up the size that, if you notice down here, the text height. Now I set it for 5 millimeters. 5 millimeters is just under 1/4 of an inch. 6 millimeters is roughly 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to keep it at 5 millimeters right now because that seems to be a pretty good number, just because it's a round number. You can make it anything. And I'm going to show you how to resize it later on. So now the Arial rounded, I find, is about the best for carving, but that doesn't mean you have to use it. You can play around with the different fonts, and you have many different fonts to choose from. As the font gets narrower, I can show you some tricks where you have to trick the machine to actually cut it. Because what happens is, as the font gets narrow on some of the areas, say for instance this area here, this thin area on the A, if this was really narrow and it and it winds up being narrower than the end of the bit, VCarve will skip over that and it will not cut it. But I can show you a trick on how to force it to go ahead and cut that. But right now, let's just focus on an aerial rounded, and we're going to use bold, and we can bold it here. And as you see, it makes it a little bit fatter. And the fatter this text is, the more you're actually going to get a nice carving out of it. And so with this done, I'm going to close it. Now, as you see, the text is going the wrong direction. If I was to make a file off of this, it would cut across the handle because your handle's going down the y-axis. So I need to turn this text to where it's actually going down the y-axis. And then the other important thing is I want the text centered on the 0, 0 position, which will be where you set the 0 of the center of the bit. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to transform the object that's in this transform area of the menu. And the highlighted that I just highlighted is I'm going to rotate the highlighted feature. And the highlighted feature is your name. You see it's in pink there. So your name is the highlighted feature. Let me just unhighlight it. You see it's in black there. Now I don't have anything highlighted right now. And so if I click your name, this is a set of vectors that it just created with your name in the highlighted feature. And I'm going to rotate the object. So I'm going to select right here, rotate object. That's a single click. Now I have a menu here on how to highlight it. Now I can rotate it around a specific coordinate, but I just want it to rotate it relative around that center dot. You see this center dot right here it's made in the middle of it? And I want to rotate it 90 degrees. That's this, so I just put 90 degrees in there. I could rotate it at any angle that I wanted to, and it's relative to that center of the work. And if I apply this, you see, it turns at 90 degrees. If I want to do it again, it'll flip it again 90 degrees, and again 90 degrees, and again 90 degrees. So as you see, you can turn this around in any position that you absolutely want by any angle. So now I've got it to where the J is coming from the bottom of the handle going to the end where the blade side is. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And now the name is in there, but it's not in the center. And I want it in the center. So if I'm just clicking out here to show you, so that if you, in case you accidentally click outside, I want to show you that you can highlight it, and you can always highlight it later. So I want to move your name to the center of the crosshair, which is the center of the work, where you're going to center the bit. So I'm going to select this here, Align Selected Objects. So I'm going to click that. And now I've got to select an object. So I'm going to select your name, and you notice it highlighted your name. And now I have there's many ways that you can center this, but I like to use these top 3 when I'm trying to center it in the middle of the work. Here I can center it left and right. Here I can center it up and down. And here I can center it one click straight to the center. And that's what this center block is. It's saying if you click me, I'm going to put your highlighted feature to the center of the work. So let me click that. And you see it move your name to the center, and it's exactly the same length both up and down. Okay, so if your name was longer, then if I put Byron in there, it would then move it to the center of wherever Jack Byron Rogers. If it was just Rogers, it would move to the center of Rogers. So now that I've got that in the center, I'm going to close this. So at this point, I have your name in the center of work. And again, it didn't really matter how big my work size is, because it's only going to carve out your name, and it's going to start from wherever you called 0, 0. So that means you could put 0, 0 anywhere. You could put it on the handle at the blade area, so long as you As long as you say, this is where I want to have the center of my carving. Now the next we're going to move over to the carving menu. To move over to the carving menu, it's always nice to see the image of the wood. And now I started with just, and it opens by default to just show you the drawing screen, which is an outline of what the wood size is. But if you go up here to the top on the far right hand side, if you click this, it then toggles the screen to show you a blank piece of wood and the drawing screen that you use. Now don't worry about the grain direction. That's arbitrary, and the grain direction is always horizontal. That doesn't have anything to do with it. Just realize that this is your wood size, but it's not really yours, but it's the wood size that you called it and you defined over here. And this is your drawing screen. I can add all kinds of stuff in here when I draw. So now, if you see over here, you have that little blue arrow that's up at the top, and that's how you switch to the tool path. You can also go to the menu right here to switch to the tool paths, but I always just click this little button right here. If I click this button, it gives me the tool path screen. And now the button moved over to the right hand side. If I want to get out of the toolpath screen, I click this, and now I'm back into the drawing screen. Now if I'm in the toolpath screen and I need to draw something, I can click on the drawing, but if I go up here, I can double click, and it gives me not only the drawing menu, but the toolpath menu, all in one. And if I select this, which centers all the work, now I have all three menus all up at once. And I find that kind of helpful sometimes, because sometimes I need to go back and make a slight change to the drawing. And so I have my drawing menus up here, and then I have my toolpath menus up here. And I use a fairly big screen on my desk, so I can manage all of this work. Now, when I start here and I'm ready to make this, again, if I get out of this, if I just click into this gray area, I no longer have your name highlighted. And I did that on purpose because we wanted to go step by step on this. So the first thing you need to do is get in the material setup. And this is kind of important. So I'm going to click the material setup here. And all this does is it double checks the things that we did at the beginning on this other side where I set the job dimensions and the original stuff. So I'm going to click this, and I want to make sure my thickness is right. I want to make sure that the center of the work is in the center of the work, that's where this red, see this red in the R, that's the center of the work. My 0 is going to be off the material surface. Model position in the material. For carving names, you always want the gap above the model at 0. That way, it always works off of the surface. This is the important part, the rapid Z gaps above the material. Now, this is so that when it goes from letter to letter, it has to lift up, move over, and then go back down. I use as a default 10 millimeters for the clearance, 10 millimeters for the plunge, and the Z gap above material, I use 10 millimeters. Okay, this home start position means that the beginning of all of your programs, even though you still had the bit right at the wood, the first movement on when you set this up is going to where you said for the bit to start from. So the first command line in the G code will say go to this home position, and I have it usually always set at 0, 0. So where the bit starts at 0, 0, but I always have it start 10 millimeters above the surface. And that's important because if it starts right at the surface, or if you have it right at the surface, it's going to go from that over to the first start position, and it may scratch your wood. So you want it to go up first and then go over. So I always set this at 10 millimeters above the material surface. And now I click, now that we have all of this done, click OK. Now I'm ready to create a toolpath for Jack Rogers. So so now I'm going to click this right here where it has this V inside that window, and it's for VCarve. You see that where it's highlighted yellow there, it's VCarve. You use this command to carve out, and it'll only carve out the name. So I click VCarve, and now we have a lot of menus here, and I'll go through them one by one. But before I do, I'm going to talk about the bit, and we have to work about the bit first. So now I'm going to move in a picture of the two bits that you have. These are the two bits that you have for cutting, and they both do things a little bit different. The key thing that I want to talk about the bit is, if you look at the bit, you can see this one has a little bitty flat space. Let me zoom in on this here, and I'm going to make this bigger, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to show you the top of. Oh, it won't let me move it. Okay, well that's not good. So I guess I'm not going to be able to move that. All right. So anyway, if you just look at the top really close, you can see this has a little bitty flat, and this has sort of a ball end on the end of it. These bits that you have that look like this with the gold on the top have a 0.1 millimeter flat. So that's how big that's how flat the top is of that bit right there. It's 0.1 millimeters. So 0.1 millimeters is roughly 3/1000ths of an inch. Let me just calculate that. Meter, feet. I'm going to go to inches here and millimeters and calculate. Let me clear that. 0.1 is 3.9 thousandths of an inch. So it's roughly 4/1000ths of an inch. And that's this little bit, and this little bit is an 1/8 inch or 3 millimeters in diameter. So you'll need to get the small collet and put that in your bit if you're going to use this particular bit. Now, I'm going to be setting up the program to where it really doesn't matter which bit you use, okay? But the difference is, if you have something really, really fine, you want to use this 0.1 bit, okay? If you have something that's kind of big, then you might want to use this other bit, okay? This is a 6 millimeter shank, which is roughly 1/4 of an inch, and it's 0.8 millimeters flat on the top. Now, as you see, it's not really 0.8 flat. What that is a 0.8 radius on the end. You can see it's a ball end. So it's a 0.8 radius, which is right at 1.5 millimeters wide. So that means that it's a 30/1000ths radius at the end of that, which makes a fairly big cut, but you can still actually use this pretty good. But the next thing I want you to do is, I'm going to move this over to the side, is, again, let's not worry about anything. Let's talk about the tool that you're going to use. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to select the tool. And so you're going to select the tool, and I'm going to bring back this photo of the bits so that we have something that you can kind of reference to. Now, I don't know if I ever set up any tools. So the first thing I wanted you to do is I want you to make a tool, okay? So we're going to click here on this plus, and we're going to select the tool. Now, it's best at this point for you to just kind of follow along with me piece by piece on what you need to do. Okay, it looks like it's going to keep throwing that off the screen. So what you're going to remember is, we're going to create a tool that will work for either one of these in reality. And we're going to make two kinds of tools. We're going to make a tool for normal engraving, and then later on I'm going to show you a little trick on how to make a tool for real fine engraving. And it really is only a setting, and it just tricks the system. So first thing we're going to do here is we're going to create a tool. All right. And then I'm going to put in the notes, I'm going to say regular engraving. And this gives me a kind of a what did I make this tool for thing. And the geometry will be an engraving bit. Okay. So this means that this bit is meant for engraving. All right. That's the tool type. The units I'm going to keep in millimeters, and that's because your machine is set up in millimeters, and I set it up in millimeters for a reason. So the diameter of this bit, because we're going to make the first one, which is over here, this first one right here, okay, is a 3 millimeter diameter bit. Now the side angle, if you look at this little screen, is the angle of this. Now, when I buy these bits, they call them 20-degree bits. That means that the angle between the two edges is 20 millimeters. But the program doesn't look at it that way. It looks at half of this. So it's a 10 millimeter side. I said millimeters, 10 degrees. This is a 10-degree side angle on this piece right here. And then this is the important part for engraving. The flat diameter, and that's the reason why I gave you this, is 0.1 millimeters. Okay. The number of flutes is irrelevant, and this is actually a single flute bit because it's only got one cutting edge. It doesn't have cutting edge on two sides. Now, the other bit, if you look at the long bit, if you look at these closely, they have a cutting edge on two sides. So it's a two flute. But the ones that look like kind of a needle are actually single flute bits. But reality, that doesn't really matter that much. So I'm going to create the settings for this. It lost my when I went to engraving, it lost this. So I'm going to say regular, GULAR, engraving, ENGRAVING. So there's your regular engraving. When I chose something different off of this menu, it got rid of that for me. Wasn't that nice? So anyway, so I'm going to create these settings. So create the settings, and now I have a whole bunch of other information in here. And so this is going to have to follow along with me. After you set up a couple of these, you'll understand a little bit. So the pass depth, meaning how deep I want it to cut. I want it to cut all of these V grooves in one cut. Okay, I don't want it to go 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times because that's just waste of time. So the pass depth, I always like to put these at 2 millimeters deep. Most engraving I do is not more than 2 millimeters. I actually usually engrave between 1 and 1.5 millimeters thick. The step over, meaning that if it has a large flat area, it's going to step over that flat area by a certain distance. Now, it's always a good thing here to set the step over, normally speaking, 1 0 decimal place than the bit. And this gets you the cleanest burr-free area. So for instance, if the flat diameter is 0.1, which is this area right here, I'm going to set the step over at 0.01. You see, I just added a 0 in there. Don't worry about this stuff. This doesn't really mean anything. Clearance pass step over, I'll do the same thing too. I'll set that to 1 over the bit. Spindle speeds for these is 24,000 RPM, okay? Let's change the feed rates because remember your machine is in millimeters. Change the feed rates to millimeters per minute, and these bits cut best at 500 millimeters per minute. Plunge rate, I usually set at 250. Normally, always, I set my plunge rate at half of my feed rate, whatever it is. Tool number, okay, so this is kind of important whenever you're trying to make multiple runs with the same tool. And we'll just always leave that at 1. We'll hit apply. Now it saves it here, okay, in this engraving. And then I'm going to select this one right here. So now I've selected it. So now we'll go from top to bottom on this and I'll explain this. So on the engraving, on the V-Carve engraving, we have a start depth at 0. So that means it's going to start engraving from the surface of your material. And then the flat depth, meaning the deepest it cuts. Now see, your name Jack has a lot of flat space because you realize that bit, remember I showed you that bit is almost like a needle. So it's going to make a flat here all the way through all of this stuff. But it's going to be a fairly straight down edge on the rest of it. So that's the flat depth. That's the depth in between the lines, okay? And we're going to set that flat depth at 1.5 millimeters. Okay, if by chance when I selected this tool I wanted to make some changes to the parameters, I can do that right here in the edit screen. Okay, but I don't want to change it for anything. Now you're not going to use a clearance tool, and a clearance tool is, let's say that I had a really big carving and I wanted to use like a ball end mill to carve out most of this so that it didn't have to cut as much with the small bit, but we're not going to really use that. Okay, use the vector start points. Let's not worry about any of this business. It defaults to use selection order. That's okay because you're not really going to matter about any of that. But what you have to do at this point, you have to select a vector. And that's when now I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to highlight the name. Now I have it something that it can actually carve from. From here, you can have it project toolpath onto 3D model. Now, I always do that because let's say that you carved a dish out, a dish surface, and I can show you how to carve a dish surface out first with a ball end mill, and then make the carving on the surface of the dish. I'll do that into another learning for you, but I always select this as yes. Put the toolpath on the 3D model. For you, if it's a flat board, the 3D model is the surface of the board, and that's always good to have. Now you can name it, and we're just going to say name carving. Now, the interesting thing is after you have this file, and I'll show you, you can change that name and keep all of the setup the same, and all you have to do is recalculate it. And if you do that, you don't have to go through any of the settings, and it'll make the name right up, right along the center. Now you'll have to rechange the center if the name has more characters. But anyway, so name carving, and then I'm going to click calculate, and it's going to come through and it's going to calculate Jack Rogers. All right. And it automatically brings you into the preview toolpath menu. So with it highlighted, name carving right there, checked. If I didn't check it, it wouldn't be on there. But if I check it, it shows me the toolpath from the 0 point. You see, this is the 0 point, and the first movement it comes to is all the way over here. It actually comes to here at some point. I don't know why it does that. There's nothing to cut out there. But so as you see, if you didn't come off the wood first, it would have drugged the bit all the way across there, and that's what you don't want. So what it's going to do is it's going to cut each letter individually and lift up 10 millimeters and move to the next letter, lift up 10 millimeters, move to the next letter. It's going to keep doing that until it goes all the way across. So now let's preview this by click preview the visible toolpath, and I'm going to click preview. And now, as you see, this is what it's going to look like when it carves your name on the board. Now, if I didn't want it to go so deep, all I had to do was, I'm going to close this preview. All I had to do was double click into it. Let me close that again. So I just select, I already have this toolpath calculated. And let's say, you know what, I don't want it to go 1.5 millimeters. I only want it to go 1 millimeter deep. So I just double click in that name, and I come up here and I change this to 1 millimeter deep, and then I click calculate again. So now it's going to recalculate it. Again, it brings me back over here to the preview of the toolpaths. If I select reset my preview, it gets rid of the previous preview. It always remembers the preview, by the way, when you get in and out. And then I preview this. You get the same, but it's not as deep. So there's your name, and then I'm going to close this. All right. So now I need to save the work. And here, what you want to do is you want to put your USB card. I think I gave you a card that you put in your computer. You want to put the card in your computer, and I need to select the toolpath, and then I want to go to this Save Toolpath screen. By the way, before I go into that, if you want to see how long it takes, if you go into the summary of the toolpath, if I click there, you see it takes 11 minutes and 24 seconds to carve that. So now, if I want to save the toolpath, I click Save Toolpath. That's this little icon of the 3.5-inch floppy. And I want to save the selected toolpath. The post processor you want to find is, there's a bunch of them in here. You should be already set up to Mach 2.3 ATC ARS millimeters, and it's going to create a .txt file. Now, you remember how yesterday I worked with you on how to switch whenever you get into Mach 3, what the file type is. And that's what happened was the last time you looked, the last time I did something for you was that airplane. And that airplane was a .txt file. And your handle, it was made with a different program. And I can redo your handle program for you, or actually you're going to email me something, and then, which I didn't see the email, but after I get the email, I'll do a video on how to redo your handle in Aspire. And then you can have all files with an extension that's .txt. So you see .txt. That's the file extensions you're going to be looking for, and I'll show you on the SD card that I just put in. So now I'm going to save the toolpaths, and you can see all these. This is your planes right here. This is all your planes here, and if I'm going to put it straight to the SD card, I want to go to this machine, and my SD card didn't pick up, so I need to open that. There we go. Now I heard it. Now I'm going to select the SD card, double click on the SD card, and you can put it anywhere on the SD card. You can see it says SD card up here, this PC, and then this is usually the name of the SD cards. And it'll be DC drive. It doesn't really matter what that is. So the carving, as you see, it defaults to the name that you have written here. And it's going to be namecarving.txt. Now, again, I have another chance to save it as, and it's going to save it as a Mach 3, but you see it again, it's going to save it as a TXT. So name carving TXT is going to be on the SD card. Or I can put it on my PC, and I have a directory in here on the desktop that I put most of your stuff in. I can also save it on the hard drive. And these are some, like I said, some of the things that I've done for you there. So let's go back to the SD card, and then, because that's how you'll be able to do it. Or if you want to save it on the hard drive, you just have to remember to put it on an SD card or USB drive, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to click Save. Now it's saved it on the SD card, and you have everything that you need. Now let's go back and check the SD card. Going to navigate through Windows, this PC, here's the SD card, There's the name carving right there. Now this is where Windows was getting confused to you because you were trying to open it in Windows. If I double click this, I've already got text files to come up as Notepad. But this is what Windows did for you. If I want to say open with, it has a different, see, it has a choose another app, and this is what you got from Windows. And it said, okay, what do you want to open it up with? And I can open it up with anything normally because it's a text file. Any word processor opens up that. So I'm just going to use Notepad. And as you see, here is the file. And this is the G code, point by point of what it is. And the interesting thing is, this is what I want to show you here, is you see this command right here. This command says that's the home position. And the very first command is to go to Z10, okay? So that's the 10 millimeters off of the top. And so it's going to go to Z10, and then it's going to go to the start point of your name right there. There's the start point of your name, okay? And then it's going to just start making it, and it's thousands of lines of text. I have them always giving you a line number, so that it gives you, there's your line numbers on the text. You're familiar with line numbers. And so, and then this is, again, this is the Z, this is the height. And remember, we set the height or the depth to be 1 millimeter. And then this is the XY coordinates right there. Right there. That's the XY coordinate that it's going to go through. And the way this program does, it literally goes point to point, point to point. Now, you can also see that it gives you your tool name. So if you open up this file, it always tells you what your tool name is. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't give you the name in the notes and any of that kind of stuff. It gives you your material size if you ever want to know what that is. Okay, so that's just about it. I'll do another video showing you how to outline a PDF file. Not a PDF, how to outline, you can use a PDF file actually, and I can show you how to take images from a PDF file as well. But I'll do another video showing you how to outline this file in the next one. And this one will have to trick it because I already pre-did one and I saw, but the next one, how to take a picture like this. If somebody gives you a picture, it's always best to turn it into black and white. Taking a picture, and then from the picture, we can do a V-carve, and it'll be much more efficient. You don't have to actually, like the other program I used where it was trying to carve out the whole thing. It'll literally just focus on the parts that you need to carve. Well, that's it. I hope you work at from here. If you have any questions, just let me know. So now we're going to stop. Bye.